The skit Brienne of Tarth offered Sansa Stark in Season 5, Episode 2, titled The House of Black and White, required none of that. No sword needed to be drawn, no blood needed to be spilled. All Sansa had to do was say yes, one word, two letters, and she would have walked out of that inn a free woman, under the protection of the most capable warrior in the Seven Kingdoms, pointed towards safety. She said no, instead. She said it coldly, publicly, and with a dismissiveness that made Brienne look like a fool for even asking. The man sitting across the table had engineered that response in under 90 seconds. His name was Petyr Baelish, and the move he pulled at that inn table is the finest piece of psychological manipulation the show ever put on screen. The setup, what made the inn scene a trap before Brienne opened her mouth. The inn encounter in Season 5, Episode 2 is often described as a coincidence. Brienne and Podrick happen to stop at the same Wayfarer's Rest where Littlefinger and Sansa are eating. It is presented as chance. Rewatch it knowing what Littlefinger knows, and it stops looking like chance entirely. The moment Brienne stands up to approach their table, Littlefinger has already clocked her. He recognized her. They had been introduced by Renly Baratheon previously, a fact he notes with theatrical pleasantry at the table. He knows who she is, what she represents, and what her presence means. He also knows something crucial that Brienne does not. He is surrounded by armed guards. She has only Podrick Payne, and Sansa has already been conditioned, over months, to treat Littlefinger's judgment as her primary reference point. The environment at that table is entirely Littlefinger's. Brienne walked into it as a guest. Sansa was already inside it as a resident, and Littlefinger knew that the framing of the conversation, who had power in that room, who was surrounded by support, who the stranger was, would do half his work before he said a single word. Littlefinger invites Brienne forward with transparent politeness, and Brienne swears her sword to Sansa. Then Littlefinger questions Brienne about what happened to Renly. She tells the story of Stannis' shadow, but Littlefinger only points out how many times Brienne has failed. The mechanics of that sequence are precise. He lets Brienne make her full oath, lets her invest in the moment, lets Sansa hear the whole thing, and then he disassembles it. He does not argue with her intentions, he argues with her record. And her record, viewed from a certain angle, is genuinely terrible. The surgical strike, how Littlefinger used Brienne's failures against her in real time. The specific move Littlefinger makes in this scene is one of the most efficient pieces of character assassination in the series. He does not lie, he does not fabricate, he does not need to. He simply selects which true facts to present, in which order, and frames them with a question rather than a statement, which is far more devastating, because a question cannot be argued with the way an accusation can. His line is this. He asks why he, as Sansa's uncle by marriage, should want such a failure protecting Sansa. The word failure is surgical. Not unfortunate, not unlucky, failure. He is not saying Brienne tried and circumstances defeated her. He is saying she is constitutionally, demonstrably, a person who fails the people who depend on her. And he has two examples that Sansa personally knows to be true, sitting right there on the table. Renly Baratheon, killed while under Brienne's protection by a shadow demon that Brienne could not stop. And Catelyn Stark, Sansa's mother, who died at the Red Wedding, while Brienne was nowhere near her. Now here is the layer that makes this move genuinely sinister. Brienne was not present at the Red Wedding because Catelyn had sent her away with Jaime Lannister on a mission of prisoner exchange, a mission Catelyn herself had ordered. Brienne had not abandoned her post, she had followed her lady's direct instruction. But in the 90-second window of an inn confrontation, with no time for Sansa to think through the full history, Littlefinger has framed it as a second failure. Nuance does not survive the speed of the moment. Sansa hears, both the people this woman swore to protect are dead. She does not hear, one of those deaths was not Brienne's fault. Littlefinger knows the difference. He is counting on the distinction being too slow to surface. He is, as Varys once described him to Lady Olenna Tyrell in Season 3, Episode 4, the most dangerous man in Westeros. Not because he commands armies or wields great swords, because he understands that the most effective weapon in any confrontation is the other person's existing doubt, and he always arrives knowing exactly where that doubt lives. What Sansa did that nobody noticed, the hidden signal in her rejection. Here is the detail that changes everything about this scene, and it was confirmed not in any review or critical analysis, but by the actress herself. According to direct statements from the actress that plays Brienne, the script specified that Sansa is only making a show of telling off Brienne for Littlefinger's benefit, but contained the nonverbal instruction to the Sansa actress that, while she's saying these lies, she's shooting Brienne a desperate look with her eyes that says, "I want to go with you, but you need to run before Littlefinger's guards kill you. The idealistic and naive Brienne doesn't pick up on this, or Littlefinger's looks to his guards until the swords come out. That single piece of scripted direction, hidden inside what looks like a cold rejection, rewrites the scene completely. Sansa was not brainwashed in that moment. She was not fully deceived. She was performing compliance for an audience of one, the man sitting across the table, with armed guards at every exit, while trying to warn Brienne with the only channel of communication available to her, her eyes. And Brienne, for all her physical courage and genuine loyalty, missed it entirely. She reads the room for physical threats. She does not read it for the layered performance of a girl who has spent 4 seasons learning to say one thing with her mouth and another thing with her face. Littlefinger created that girl, and at the end, that creation worked against the one person trying to rescue her. This is what makes Littlefinger's trap so complete and so tragic. He did not need to fool Sansa at that table. He had already built the conditions that forced her to choose his side regardless of what she believed. The psychological chains were not her belief in him. They were her knowledge of what he would do to anyone she visibly chose over him. The trap was not built at the inn. The inn was just where she demonstrated she was already inside it. The Alanay Stone operation. The deeper cage Brienne never knew existed. The inn scene is the most visible moment of Littlefinger's control over Sansa. But by season 5, there was a structure of manipulation underneath it that had been built brick by brick since the end of season 3, and understanding that structure is what makes the inn scene land with full weight. After smuggling Sansa out of King's Landing following Joffrey's death, Littlefinger did not simply relocate her. He replaced her. He gave her the assumed identity of Elaine Stone, his bastard daughter. He constructed a full biography for this invented person. Elaine's mother was a gentlewoman of Braavos, who died in childbirth. He coached Sansa on the storyline by line. He had her hair darkened. In season 5, Sansa dyes her hair black to disguise herself as Elaine Stone, Littlefinger's bastard daughter, so that bounty hunters looking for the auburn-haired Sansa Stark would have a harder time finding her. The physical transformation was the visible layer. The psychological transformation was more thorough and more dangerous. Sophie Turner, who played Sansa across all 8 seasons, confirmed in interviews that the character's hair was deliberately used as a visual record of whose influence was dominant at any given moment. As she put it, Sansa's hair is constantly reflecting the people she's learning from, or mimicking, or inspired by at the time. In season 5, Sansa's hair is Littlefinger's color. It is not Stark red. It is not Lannister gold. It is the color of Petyr Baelish's invention, the daughter he created, dressing the girl he was controlling. The inn scene happened inside this context. The woman who rejected Brienne had been renamed, re-haired, relocated, and refathered. Brienne was offering rescue to Sansa Stark, but the girl at the table was currently being Elaine Stone, and Elaine Stone had no other family, no other home, and no other protector except Petyr Baelish. Books make this identity replacement even more disturbing. George R.R. Martin has claimed that the Sansa Stark identity may be dead, leaving only Elaine Stone. In the novels, Sansa has started to refer to herself as Elaine in her own POV chapters, an internal capitulation that goes far beyond playing a role for safety. She begins to think of herself in those terms. The psychological replacement is progressing from performance into belief. Petyr Baelish, Lord Protector of the Vale, tutors Sansa in some of the finer points of courtly intrigue, and convinces her that lies are not harmful if meant kindly. He is not just coaching her to lie, he is coaching her to accept lying as a neutral, even compassionate act. He is rewriting the ethical framework she grew up with, the Stark framework of honor and directness, and replacing it with his own. Littlefinger's philosophy, why he needed Sansa specifically. The inn scene cannot be fully understood without asking the question that the show poses but never answers cleanly: why Sansa? All the assets Littlefinger could have controlled, all the political leverage he could have accumulated, why was this particular girl the center of his entire operation from season 1 onward? The surface answer is political. Sansa Stark is the heir to Winterfell in the north, a fact Tywin Lannister confirmed in season 3 when he called her the key to the north. With Robb Stark dead and Theon Greyjoy believed to have killed her brothers, she is the last viable Stark claimant. Whoever controls Sansa Stark controls a dynastic argument for the largest territory in Westeros. That is a real political asset, and Littlefinger understood its value precisely. His endgame, as he eventually reveals to Sansa in the novels, is to marry her to Sir Harald Hardyng, heir to the Vale, reveal her true identity at their wedding, and use the Knights of the Vale to retake Winterfell in her name. Control Sansa, control the North. But underneath the political calculation is something the show handles with deliberate ambiguity and the books make explicit. Littlefinger is obsessed with Sansa because she looks exactly like her mother Catelyn Tully, the woman he loved and lost as a boy. Littlefinger is skilled at reading people and understanding their weaknesses, which he then cleverly exploits to further his own agenda. With Lysa Arryn, he took advantage of her obsessive love for him and used it to gain power and control over the Vale. He also manipulated Sansa Stark by preying on her naivety and desire for safety, using her as a pawn in his schemes. The dynamic is not purely predatory or purely political. It is both simultaneously, and that combination is what makes him so difficult to read and so dangerous to be near. Sansa is, to Littlefinger, a political asset and a psychological fixation wearing the same face. He cannot fully separate his strategic interest from his personal one. And that blurring of motives is exactly what makes his manipulation so difficult for Sansa or anyone else to cleanly identify and escape. What Brienne got wrong and why her failure was built into her character. It is easy, watching the inn scene, to be frustrated with Brienne. She had the right read on Littlefinger. She had the right oath. She had the right physical capability to protect Sansa from practically anyone in Westeros. And she walked out of that inn alone, because she could not crack a social performance that a frightened teenager was running under duress. But the failure is not really Brienne's failure of intelligence. It is Brienne's failure of mode. Everything Brienne knows about the world is physical. The right oath, the right sword, the right position between the person she is protecting and the thing threatening them. Littlefinger's world operates on a completely different register, one where the threat is never the physical thing in front of you, but the frame being constructed around it. Brienne cannot fight a frame. She can cut through every guard in that inn. She cannot cut through 90 seconds of precisely delivered doubt planted in a girl who has every reason to distrust strangers. Pod suggests after they escape and regroup that maybe Sansa is right to have stayed. Pod asks whether she is perhaps safe where she is. Brienne says they will follow Littlefinger and Sansa. She has already arrived at the right conclusion. She just arrived at it too late to do anything about it at the inn. And Littlefinger, watching from the carriage as his entourage moves on, knows exactly what just happened. He had 90 seconds of conversation, and he used them to close a door that Brienne will spend most of Season 5 trying to reopen from the outside. Where the road from that inn leads, the cost of the choice Littlefinger made for her. The reason the inn scene in Season 5 Episode 2 matters as more than a clever moment of manipulation is what it directly triggers. By the time the scene ends and Brienne rides away alone into the Vale countryside, Littlefinger has already sealed Sansa's trajectory for the rest of the season, and that trajectory leads directly to Ramsay Bolton. Littlefinger has already informed Sansa that he's bringing her somewhere far away where Sansa will be safe from Queen Cersei. What he has not told her is that the marriage proposal he received, the one she asked about at the inn table, is for her to marry Ramsay Bolton, heir to Winterfell. He will inform her of this on the road, after the inn, after Brienne's exit has been secured. He will frame it as a path home. He will present Winterfell as restoration, as agency, as the thing she has wanted since Season 1. What he will not present is Ramsay, a man whose cruelty would make Joffrey Baratheon look like a reasonable human being, as the price of that return. Sansa is horrified to learn she will be marrying Ramsay Bolton, and she tells Littlefinger, "I won't do it. I will starve myself. I will die before I go there." She says it, and she still goes. That is the full architecture of Littlefinger's trap made visible. He does not force Sansa to do anything. He does not chain her or threaten her explicitly. He constructs a world in which every available door leads somewhere he controls, and then he presents those doors as her choices. The rejection of Brienne at the inn was not Sansa's free decision. It was the only response available to a person already inside a cage designed to look like a home.